When communities crash and burn, there's almost always something that holds true. People have refused to say, "I'm sorry." We really don't know what was going on between Paul and the Corinthian church he had founded. It seems that after Paul wrote the first letter to the Corinthians, you know, the one with all that pretty stuff in it, like the great hymn to love, "So faith, hope, and love abide these three, but the greatest of these is love," that one. Well, it seems after he wrote that, he made a second visit to Corinth. And on that visit, someone took issue with him, challenged his leadership, maybe even his standing as an apostle. Now remember, an apostle was someone who had seen the risen Christ. Paul saw the risen Jesus in his vision, which of course came long after Jesus had ascended and returned to the Father. And Paul could get a little sensitive when people challenged his apostleship. And when the church itself had not defended Paul against this individual, Paul skipped town. And then he postponed a promised visit back. And then he wrote what must have been a rather scathing letter to that community. A letter that's lost to us because I'm guessing the Corinthians wanted to forget about it. That's the situation we see Paul addressing today. And now that he has heard that the Corinthians long for his return, that they have punished the person who offended Paul, Paul says, "Good, thank you. I'm glad that you are now following again the Christ I preached to you, and now you must also forgive my offender, so that there will be peace." In other words, church conflict is not something Lutherans or Mennonites or Episcopalians or Methodists or Roman Catholics invented. It's been with us since the beginning, and it persists many times because people will not say, "I'm sorry." But it's not just the church, is it? This weekend's Memorial Day weekend, and it's a cause of great celebration for many people. And let's face it, part of that is because Americans don't tend to get enough time off. You give us a 3-day weekend and we go crazy because we're just thirsting for time away. But the day is really meant to be the day when we remember the fallen, those who paid the ultimate price for our freedom. It began as Decoration Day, shortly after the Civil War, when folks would actually take flowers to the graves of the Civil War slain and decorate them and say prayers. My own wife, Frida, has fond memories of growing up in Gettysburg, where their Memorial Day parade actually ended in the Civil War cemetery, and they continued this tradition. In 1971, it became official. The 3-day holiday was born, and now we quite rightly remember those who gave the ultimate for our own freedom. But if you're like me at all, you also wonder a bit. You wonder how many lives could have been spared, how many people could have been saved, if human beings and human organizations, be they churches or countries, found it a little easier to say, "I'm sorry." Now, a quick aside, I know there's some folks out there who say "I'm sorry" all the time. Maybe because they're afraid of offending or they're insecure. I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about saying it in a deeper way. And I think that most of the time we don't want to say those words because they admit some fault. Who wants to be wrong? Who wants to say that their worldview was a little bit incorrect? Who wants to say that they have to change some? And when you say "I'm sorry" and you really mean it, you are saying that part of you needs to change. But the person who can never say it is never ever going to grow. Now you might wonder why I'm talking about asking for forgiveness in a sermon that, if you noticed your This Week at Trinity email this week, was supposed to be about giving forgiveness. Well, I'm talking about it because I think for most human beings, the ability to offer forgiveness comes with a recognition that forgiveness is something we all need. Paul's accuser needed forgiveness. Frankly, so did the entire church for letting this person do such a thing to Paul, for threatening the very existence of this young congregation. Likewise, when we encounter conflict in our own family, in our own church family, in our workplace, in our communities, even in our countries, we have to remember human beings are all flawed. Human organizations bear the mark of this flaw. And even when we're on the right side of truth, there's probably something we could have done better in a situation. And asking for forgiveness, as we grant forgiveness, it's usually a good thing to do. Saying I'm sorry heals community. Saying I'm sorry offers the chance for others to do the same. Saying I'm sorry takes down the wall between people that says, I'm blameless, you're not, I'm right, you're wrong. And it offers a chance for healing, a chance for real forgiveness. And once you forgive, you put the hammer down, so to speak. You get back to living, back to life. And yeah, that's sometimes a journey, but the person who forgives takes the first step on that journey. Whenever I think about the importance of offering forgiveness, I'm reminded of one of my favorite stories, and some of you have heard it before. There were two monks who had made many promises in their discipline, promises designed to help them follow God completely, to attain enlightenment. And among those promises for these particular monks was a celibate life. In fact, these two monks had promised never to ever touch a woman. Now, they were on a journey traveling a great distance through the wilderness to another monastery. The young monk had never made this trip before. The elder monk, his master, had made it many times. And as they rounded a bend, they came to a swift, deep stream. And they saw her. A woman. A young, beautiful woman, standing nervously by the stream. The brothers approached her without a word, but before they could enter the stream, she said, "Brothers, I'm trying to get back to my village. I have medicine for my mother, but I can't get across this stream. Can you please help?" And before the younger monk could utter a word, the elder monk had swept her up into his arms and entered the stream, expertly navigating the current, taking her safely to the other side. And on the other side, he plopped her down. She fell to the ground before him, tears in her eyes, grasped his ankles in thanks, and ran off in her own direction. Well, as the monks traveled on, the younger of the two fumed. How could his master forget his vows? How could he do such a thing? How could he touch a woman, a beautiful young woman? How could he carry her? And finally he hit the point where his anger could not be controlled, and he blurted out, "Master!" But the old monk just held up his hand. "I carried her across the river," he said. "You are still carrying her." Forgiving sets us free. Forgive those who harm you. Ask for forgiveness when it's necessary. Remember, most of the time, apologies need to come from all sides in conflict. God will smile. Your load will get lighter. And your life will get better too.